you talked about my, what I would say were unforced errors this weekend. We made a couple of mistakes. It started with a email that went out about January 6th from my campaign that did not reflect my views about January 6th, and then it was followed very quickly by a press release that had the factual error in it. And all I can say that this is my responsibility. It's my campaign. We have a lot of hardworking people on the campaign, but we're all drinking from fire hoses. We have to do things that other campaigns don't. We have to get 1.5 million signatures. We have to pay for our own Secret Service. We are able to raise only a tiny fraction of the money that the other campaigns. They can get $100,000. They can get $1 million per donor. We are only allowed to take $6,600 per donor. We're trying to make do with less, and we make mistakes, and I made 2 mistakes this week, and I left people with the impression that I did not share, I think, what is the general consensus about January 6th, that it was a traumatic day in our nation's history, that there were police who were beaten, who were assaulted, that there were congressional members who were threatened, that there were people who were intending to obstruct the peaceful transfer of power in this country, and that's not okay. And it's not okay even if you believe the election was stolen. I think it was a protest that turned into a riot. I think there were people who wanted an insurrection. I don't know what your definition of an insurrection is. If your definition is armed men who are intending to take over the United States government, it wasn't that. I think there were people there who wanted to obstruct the peaceful transfer of power from one administration to the other. So it was I would say it was a very traumatic day in our nation's history, and that people committed criminal acts. Those people deserve to be in jail. Right. One of the statements that I made that upset people is I said that I would appoint a special counsel to look at. There was 350 people convicted of a statute that's obstructing the procedure of Congress. And that there's been complaints by people, by a large part of the public, about whether their sentences were appropriate. And what I said is I would appoint a special counsel to look at that. My purpose, Chris, is not to exonerate those people, but rather just to restore peace. I think, we're living in a time when Americans don't trust their government anymore. And that is really what the problem is. There is no trust in government, and we need to restore that trust. So what I'm going to do as president is I'm going to make Americans, people who I don't agree with on issues, if there's large numbers of people who see the world in one way, even if I see it in a different way, I'm going to listen to them. And I'm going to fairly look at their point of view. And, presidents appoint special counsels all the time. They do it even when, to investigate themselves. So to assure the public that there is a process here that the public can trust. And we need to do that now.
Look, I get it. I get the misgivings. I'm worried about special counsels. I believe the Department of Justice should do its job. And I believe that the 9/11 Commission was really the gold star standard of how to do this. I think there should be one on the pandemic. I think there should be one on when life begins. I think there should be one on, what the sentence range was on January 6th. If you want, that's fine. But I think that you got to get it away from these special counsels because they don't seem to really bring peace to anybody's mind about situations. You and I have talked about this, Bobby, and I'll let the audience in on it. They can judge me. What else is new? I find your candidacy to be really intriguing because I think that you have become such an antenna for all of the energy that gets sent out from both sides. Every time one side thinks that Bobby's going to affect us more than the other side, they start coming at you as how toxic you are to the process. And I believe it shows how toxic the process is. Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button down below. Then you will get more of NewsNation's fact-driven coverage.